We're already working to see which kind of proposal we can have to replace it. Definitely, I want that the Olympic Stadium become again a positive symbol.
Oh, yeah? That is Quebec Premier François Legault, who's decided now to go ahead and revive the idea of making Montreal's Olympic Stadium a positive symbol, which made me wonder, when was the last time we considered it a positive symbol?
Been a while.
Beyond the 1976 Olympics, which, of course, is what it was built for. Look, it's again a matter of talking about the roof, hundreds of $millions, he thinks, well spent on this particular place. And yes, I acknowledge, and this will be my question later in the show, it's a landmark. People see it, you fly in, it's kind of cool to see. But it's a bit of I'm being nice. It's a white elephant. It costs $32 million a year, according to the figures we have now, just to operate the Olympic Stadium. It'll never be the home. No sense. It'll never be the home to a professional sports team. It's just not the right kind of stadium for that. So what are we doing? Does this make any sense at all? Andrew Zimbalist is a professor of economics at Smith College. He's also got a book called Circus Maximus, The Economic Gamble Behind Hosting the Olympics, and that's a whole other story. Mm-hmm. He's on the line. Mr. Zimbalist, thanks so much for your time today.
Good to be with you.
Tell me, if you would, and I don't want to sure I get facts wrong here. So we're dealing with a stadium that was built in 1976. It's now one of the oldest sports stadiums, I think, anywhere in North America. Other stadiums have a lifespan of somewhere of 25 to 30 years. This thing's been around for just about 50. Why are we even talking about keeping it here, do you think?
You're asking me to explain the way politicians behave.
Well, that's not fair. You're right. You're
not
right.
necessarily a rational answer to that question. The last prominent politician I remember opining about the Olympic Stadium was Mayor Jean Drapeau,
mm-hmm.
who before the 1976 Olympics said that the Olympics can no more have a deficit than a man can have a baby. Well, he proved to be wrong, and I dare say that the current premier will also be proved to be wrong, especially if, and I don't know the details of the plans here, but especially if he does not have lined up a prominent professional sports team to occupy the stadium. As you point out, it costs tens of millions of dollars every year just to operate it. And if you're also going to spend hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion, to renovate the stadium, the natural question is, well, what's on the revenue side? What's the uptick here? Having a new fancy stadium doesn't do very much for a city. What is SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles that cost almost $5 billion to do? What has that done for Los Angeles? What does Yankee Stadium do for New York? People don't think about Yankee Stadium when they think about New York. They think about Broadway. They think about commerce. They think about a lot of other things. So the notion that you're going to somehow burnish the reputation of the city by keeping the roof from falling down at Olympic Stadium, I think is very far-fetched.
Well, one of the arguments continues to be, that it would simply cost too much even if we wanted to knock it down. Does that make sense?
It would cost too much to knock it down?
Yeah.
No, well, you're talking about a few $1 million to knock it down, and far less than the cost of maintaining it even for 1 year. And, I've been up there. It's nice real estate. You're right next to the Botanical Gardens, which are gorgeous. And the Botanical Gardens could become even more gorgeous if you didn't have that stadium staring at you.
So evidently it would cost around $250 million to demolish it because of the intricacies of that site. And you're touching on, the Olympic Village itself, that whole area does very well with tourists. Hundreds of thousands flock there. It makes a lot of money with the Biodome, the Insectarium, the Planetarium. There's lots going on.
Are you making a case here, Natasha, to keep this thing?
I'm making a case for it serving some sort of purpose. It could be, if the rest of the village is working and is lucrative, why can't we find a cause, a purpose, a raison d'etre for this Olympic Stadium?
So we're talking about a plan. Okay.
You have a lot of good facilities around there. I'm not sure that the stadium is one of them. And the notion that it would cost $250 million to knock down seems to me to be extraordinarily unrealistic. I don't know of any stadium that's cost anywhere near that.
Well, I will tell you.
They tend to cost several $1 million, sometimes $10 or $20 million to knock down. I'd like to see a lot more details on the claim of $250 million.
I actually think it's more. I think one of the arguments made, because this topic comes up, Mr. Zimbalist, every now and then, and I think the last time we talked about this, the idea of what it would be so difficult to take it down and so expensive is because it also sits above a metro station. There's a subway running basically underneath that facility, and that in and of itself poses a huge problem too. So, I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not, neither are you, someone who could say, no, I know this is how much it would cost to demolish. But my other question is, if we keep sticking a roof, go ahead.
Wouldn't the subway also complicate the renovation of the stadium?
Well, I guess just not inside if you had to renovate it. I'm not sure what we're talking about with respect to a roof. I think you could do that without affecting the metro below. But does it make sense to keep investing? We put up, this would be the third roof, I think, if I haven't lost count, that we'd be putting up at a cost of several $100 million. And my question still comes back to, if we have no franchise, pro sports franchise in there, does this make sense at all from a financial point of view?
Well, it doesn't make sense even if you do have a professional sports franchise occupying it. But at least if you have a professional sports franchise that's occupying it, that the city reaps some social and cultural benefit from having it there. If the Montreal Expos were suddenly to regenerate themselves and start playing there, it's a point of it helps build community. It helps get people excited. It helps people relate to each other. There's something there if you have a professional sports team that might justify, not on financial grounds or economic grounds, but on social and cultural grounds, it might justify the investment. But if you don't have that, it's very hard for me to see what the return would be.
I will tell you, and I think Premier Legault basically sort of referenced this. He compared it, and he talks about the fact that tourists, when they come here, want to see it because it's quite a sight to see from the outside. You don't need to get inside. And said it would be like getting rid of the Eiffel Tower, comparing it as a landmark that way. Yeah, geez.
Well, I guess he and I have very different aesthetics because I think it's not the least bit attractive. It certainly is extraordinary in the way it looks, but look. Maybe you have other facts, but I'd be real surprised if there are lots of people out there around the world who travel to Montreal to see that stadium.
Mr. Zimbalist, I found it very interesting what you touched on, and you just did again there too, that, okay, it's one thing for tourists to go there and visit, but for a stadium to function and make sense financially, you have to have people who live in the city using it. So when the Expos were there, we weren't going. Not enough of us were going for it to be a sustainable model, right? So at that point, when you know that people aren't going to go, even if there is a team there, do you have to just totally and completely give up on it?
Well, look, I mean, I think the story with the Expos is a little bit more complicated. And in fact, the last year that they played there was very good attendance, and it was a very strong team. And when it was a poor team, it didn't have good attendance.
That's true.
But I think there's evidence that Canadians and Montrealers would respond to a positive team, and that's true in the United States as well as Canada. If you have a perennially bad team, it's very hard to maintain enthusiasm in a fan base.
Sure, and we could look at Tampa, by the way, for that. We were hoping to get their team. I would ask you one other thing as we wrap up, and that's whether, when you look at sports stadiums across North America, and maybe this applies across the world as well, you would have a much better idea. What are we seeing now? The new stadiums that are going up, what are they doing? Are they all much smaller? What are the difference now between what this would have been 25, 30 years ago?
It's actually quite variable. In baseball, the standard size now is about 40 to 45,000. It depends on the size of the city, of course. But new stadiums have, the newest stadiums have very complicated and expensive wireless systems in them. They have betting parlors throughout the stadium. They have to have excellent telecommunications, and they tend to cost $1 billion and more. So I don't know how you create a modern stadium with $250 million, if that's the number, or some $200 or $300 million that's being bandied about as the renovation cost. It seems to me it would cost a lot more than that.
Well, that's just the cost for the roof. That's not even the cost for renovating.
People still aren't going to. We have no team, so people still aren't going to go there.
And therein lies the problem.
And that's certainly a big void.
Listen, as I said, I'm going to be asking this question of our listeners a little later in about a half an hour from now. I thank you so much. I do appreciate you weighing in on this.
You're my pleasure. Good luck.
Take care. Thank you. Good
we
luck.
need it.
Andrew Zimbalist. The book, if you want to check it out, I'm going to read this, is called Circus Maximus, The Economic Gamble Behind Hosting the Olympics and the World Cup and many others. So remember, we were in that running, right? We could have hosted the World Cup. And at the end, didn't happen. Too much money, too expensive, and no one's coming here to watch
Right,
that.
well, and when chunks of concrete are falling.
And by the way, someone texted in, and I remember this conversation, right? The idea with knocking down the Big O, I think we should ask an architect, we should call Robert Libman on this, is this, because it's above the metro, would have to be disassembled, not just walking in, set off like a blast, dynamite blast, and knock it down. They would have to take it apart, and that's what makes it apparently very, very expensive to do. But spending $500 million to stick up a new roof and ring and whatever because we need one of those as well. Does that make sense? And look, to anybody who says, and I hate when I do this or when other people do this, you spend money to build to build a roof. It takes money away from everything else it could be spent on. And I know everyone will say we have more important things to spend our money on. So I will ask that question.
When the Expos were playing at Jerry Park, was it packed all the time?
Yeah, but that was like 20,000 people. It was a tiny little park. It was a junior baseball park. But yeah, it was. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.